is everybody doing? Welcome to the show today, guys, gals, everybody, no matter where you are, what you're doing. I am just so freaking glad that you've taken time out of your schedule to be with us today. My name is Daryl. If we've done that before, how are you? I'm glad to meet you. Check me out on LinkedIn, Daryl Prail, just like you probably see on the screen in front of you if my producer is doing a good job and has my name tag there. If he doesn't, let me know in the comments so I can fire his story behind. I'm with a company called Agorapulse. Agorapulse is I like to think it's the world's freaking best damn social media management platform. Of course, people like Hootsuite and Sprout Social might disagree, and that's fair. You should do a comparison. Check us all out, and if you pick the one you want, but I guarantee you get the biggest bang from us. That's the infomercial, the only infomercial you get from me this entire show, although I reserve the right to remind you at the end that you should really check us out. You would be shocked if I didn't. A good marketer who doesn't have a call to action is not a good marketer. Do we not agree? All right. So today we're going to have fun. So I'll set the stage for you a little bit. As you might imagine in social media, the biggest users of social media are social media managers, right? They understand the medium. They understand the audience. It's their daily job. If this is the job you have, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But the biggest challenge social media managers have is I've heard, and I don't want to say the biggest, because I've heard a variety of challenges, right? So a handful of big challenges social media managers have is they feel like they're not taken seriously. They're not respected. They recognize that they're the voice of the company. They recognize that they have a firsthand relationship with the tribe, yet they feel a little bit disrespected. They feel a little bit ignored. Some like that. Leave me alone. Let me do my job. I'm happy. Others say, I'm impacting the company. I want the kudos. I want the pay that goes with that. Now, on the flip side are the senior level executives, the CMOs, the VPs of marketing. And while there are a handful of people who really understand the medium, I would contend, and I'll ask my guests today if they agree with me. Perhaps they do, perhaps they don't. We're going to find out. That most CMOs will treat social media like it's a comms function. And for all you in a comms role, I mean no disrespect. When I say it's a comms function, I mean it's like, hey, let's do a news release and put it on the wire, and hopefully we get some media out of it. And if we don't, oh well, and I'm going to do nothing else. And that's, and then you never hear from the CMO until the next news release where the topic comes up, right? And that's not really how comms is done well. You know that, I know that. Gets back to good social media. Why is all this? Why do the CMOs not get it? Why do the social media managers feel disrespected? I will contend, my good friends, that it's all about our prolific use of vanity metrics. Now, I want to set the stage because you're not going to like it. Some people agree with me. Some people don't. When I say vanity metrics, I mean our propensity to say, did you see how much engagement I got on that post? How many likes or comments or shares? Do you see how our follower count went up? And that's interesting. Please don't get me wrong. It truly is. I remember years ago when, yes, I'm dating myself, when websites really kind of first came out. The biggest metric I had to report every single month was how many website visits we got. And that was a metric and that was it. Are they going up? And if they're going up, it must be good, right? But then over time, we started realizing that the website visits, even if they went up, didn't really mean anything if they didn't convert and close into deals. So guess what? Today, I never, ever report website visits. In fact, mostly what I report are MQLs, right? Marketing qualified leads, which typically come in through the website. That's almost a given. And we have a whole bunch of different metrics. My point being, vanity metrics today are like the website visits metric of yore, all right? Interesting, but they're not going to get you the respect. They don't really give you the insights. They don't really demonstrate the impact you're having in your organization. And there's a consequence to you and your career. Not to mention there's a consequence to the decisions you make in your marketing strategy. Okay, so that's the setup. Long-winded, I apologize. I'm just the mouthpiece here and not a very good one. I got spiky gray hair. I'm clearly trying to compensate. So let's bring in the experts. Who are they? Well, if you don't know these guys by now, you're going to love these guys when I'm done here. I want to introduce to you a longtime friend, very respected, highly revered individual in the organization. This is a cat who's been around long enough to have been a celebrity on social and then realize that's a lot of work. Maybe I'm going to pull back and focus on still being present, but instead driving a huge, massive business. That is the one, the only Jack Kozakowski. Jack is with Creation Agency. He is the CEO of their U.S. division. It is a multinational company. Jack, welcome to the show, my friend.
Well, I'm excited. I've already heard 3 things that I disagree with you on, so let's...
Yes! This is where I tell everybody, and I'm excited when he says that, because this is 100% unscripted. I've got some talking points that I want to hit these cats up on, but this is unscripted because here's the thing. I want to challenge some of your preconceived notions. I want to have a debate, and I want you guys to go in the comments and tell us what you're thinking about. Because in the end, we want you to be a little bit smarter with some takeaways and actionable items you can do when we're done here than before today's session began. If I just had a boring, we all sing Kumbaya and agree, you would tune out. We want you engaged, and that's real truth, real talk. Joining out the conversation, who I probably has 10 things he disagrees with me right now because I know him well. He is very analytical. He is very smart. He understands process and workflow. He is the most annoying guy I know to when it comes to CMOs who can just present an overwhelming pitch deck or dashboard to the board or the investors. He knows his stuff. That is Mr. James Gilbert, the CMO at Flip. James, how you doing, my friend?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. Those are big praises.
Oh, listen to that mic. I mean, Jack, you're a creation agency. You don't let James have a better mic than you? What's going on, brother?
I have to admit, like, that's a beautiful mic.
I love it. All right, let's get the party started. So James, you're here. Jack, you got multiple things you disagree with me on. I know they'll come up in conversation. The rules are, there are no rules. So we can interrupt anybody we want to. We can disagree with some respect, but feel free to get, spirited and energetic with your disagreement. And let's just have that discussion. But I'm going to start off with something really, really, really simple. And I'm going to go you first, James, because I mentioned about how, you have a lot of experience with board, with investors, with the leadership table. I know you just joined Flip within the last year, if I recall. So if I'm right based on all that, let me ask you this very simple question. As a marketing leader at your organization, as a marketing leader in your career path prior to Flip, how have you been evaluated as a marketing leader? Whether that be your CEO, your investors, that could be peers in the organization. It could be your employees. How are you evaluated as a marketing leader?
Yeah, great question, Daryl. Well, one of the things that I would say is I think our evaluation as CMOs and leaders in marketing has recently changed a little bit because of the economy, right? And we've all heard it. But I would say, especially here at Flip, I am 100% measured on efficient growth. So I want to define that for the audience just for a second. Efficient growth means what is the best type of growth that you can do with the least amount of money that you're going to spend. It's that simple. So you have to think about channels like social media that don't cost money. And I'm not talking about paid social because everyone can do paid social, but people doing really good social need to be having that as part of their plan. So we use it heavily at Flip. It's actually our primary channel of what we get a message out with. Prior to Flip, I had the opportunity to be the CMO at CRM Next, and we were serving this financial services industry, and they don't have a great presence on LinkedIn. It's just the truth. They just don't. So, but we still leveraged it a great deal. And how we were measured and evaluated was based off of revenue, pipeline creation for marketing, the CAC to LTV ratio, and what we were doing there. We'd also be measured off of NRR and MRR, those things that are happening. So if you're not familiar with NRR, net retention, monthly recurring revenue. So those are the measuring sticks that I would traditionally be held accountable to. And I see that across most boards that I've been on and sit on. Same kind of questions that we ask marketing leaders as well are around those areas. So
for those who aren't familiar with the terms, CAC is customer acquisition cost. How much did it cost you in spend to acquire that customer? LTV is your lifetime value. If that customer stays, they're $100 a month and they stay with you for 12 months before they leave, they had a lifetime value of $1,200, right? And of course, you average that out over your whole install base. All right. So NRR, your net recurring revenue, which differs from your monthly recurring revenue. Monthly recurring revenue is how much money you have coming in from your subscription every month. But you understand you're going to lose some of those people because they're either going to churn, they're going to leave, they're going to quit you, or maybe go to a competition, or maybe they lose their job, or maybe they close business. So the net recurring revenue says, this is how much money I have coming in, but this is how much money I lost. Therefore, the net is the difference. And that's what we really care about, because you can be having bangers numbers on sales, but if your customer support and customer satisfaction is horrible, they're going to all bail within 30 days. And it doesn't matter how well you're doing in sales because you're still losing money. So what I just heard you say, James, was you're a marketer. You're measured on being efficient. I watched Jack smile, and that knowing smile, which is interesting too, right? Because remember, folks, Jack is with an agency, which means Jack's got he's got a split personality. Everything that James is talking about here, Jack has to do himself for his own organization. But then Jack's got all these clients who are looking to Jack, and they're going to say to Jack, "You're an expense on my monthly, line items. What return am I getting for the money I'm getting here? But you're driving for me." And that could be awareness, but usually it's revenue, which goes back to efficient growth. So nowhere in there that when I asked you how you evaluate as a marketing leader, did I hear you say, if I have a really cool social media profile online or not? I didn't hear you say that about yourself. Or I didn't hear you say that if you appeared in the Forbes Council of Marketers. I heard you talk about really efficient, lean, cheap, revenue, CAC, LTV, NRR.
Yep. 100%. I mean, I will tell you that when I came here to Flip, there was an ask that they asked me in the interviewing process. And I have a small following. It's not big, but I have a decent following on LinkedIn. And so they asked me if we could leverage that. So I will say that as a CMO that's a little bit more active than most in social media, it is something that our executive team and even our board and investors greatly value as being a pivotal channel for us to get our POV and our messages out there.
It's a funny story, and then I want to ask you one more follow-on question. Then I'm going to put Jack on the hot seat. So it's 1 year that I've been in Agorapulse, that kind of like right now. And when I was hired, my social media presence, which is very similar to your social media presence,
yours is way bigger, Daryl. Don't kid yourself.
was a big part of the conversation as well. That they were seeking somebody like that, but they went one step further. They hired some Bay Area hotshot to interview me for 2 hours to make sure I truly understood the medium of social media and the medium of influence and how to drive it and create awareness and growth. So a third-party independent assessment, which I thought both was interesting. I thought, hey, that's a little progressive and forward-thinking, and also subjective. Like, this person that was asking me all the questions, they themselves weren't prolific. I found that was interesting. But the point being, it talks about how times have changed. Now, here's my last question that I'm going to throw it to Jack. This is the important question for you, James. Everything you've said is very cool. I agree. Everybody's listening is going, none of this resonates with me because I can't even spell CAC. Does your team understand, every single person on your team, whether they're a direct report or they're multiple layers down, do they understand how you are measured?
Yes.
And
so I'm a data driven leader.
I have a dashboard, right? You have a fat dashboard that you make them look at too, I'm sure.
It's so literally like we actually just had a conversation today about this very thing. Like we were planning a little bit for the week. We needed to make an adjustment midweek on some things, and we literally were talking about like where we were at from a pipeline creation perspective, which is obviously the yield of what we're trying to do from a top of funnel and conversion into the bottom of funnel. And we were looking at the dashboards and looking at where we're at, like how many things that we need to bring in to end this quarter on a good note. We're like a week and a half into the quarter almost, into the month. So we have like 2 weeks left of the month until the end of the quarter. So this is like where a team and a marketing team can rally. And I would say each person on the team also understands those metrics at a different level, right? But all of them understand, generally speaking, the high level metrics that we are held accountable to in marketing, like pipe generation, revenue creation. And really those two big ones are big. And Daryl, you know this because we're talking about it. And it's themed on this topic. And Jack, you know this, but the ROI of what we spend. And right now, like I can tell you firsthand, like we're operating at an incredibly efficient rate, just simply because, we're getting ready to raise another round. And when you do that, you really have to make sure like your cash balance, and you have to make sure that your runway is really, really strong. And to do that, you have to make sure that like you're not spending the money that you would typically spend to do some of the traditional marketing that you would want to do. So we're doing everything through email and social, and it is working incredibly well.
What was your first job, James, in marketing? Your very first job?
It was a data,
your role. I want to be
data
specific,
analyst.
Yeah. You're a data analyst. All right. So how far away were you from the top?
Oh man, I wasn't even like, I didn't have any direct reports. So I guess I would be more considered like I was the low, really, really low.
Did you know all this? Like the stuff everything you just talked about now, did you know all this already?
Well, I started learning about it, being close to the data. Like you start learning about these things that really matter and impact the business. And, what helped me is, especially in my career, is naturally the evolution of understanding data just within the organization empowers an individual to be able to provide insights and help other functions of the organization. So there was opportunities that were provided to me by other CMOs and directors and VPs of marketing that I reported to that it was my job when I didn't manage people to make them look amazing, right? That was my job. And the way you do that is you understand the data so well that you can help other functions understand where there's gaps. And that's what I became really good at. And that's what helped me, I would say, grow faster into a C-suite role than most people. Was that?
I'm sorry. I'll set the stage for you. Thank you so much for that. Jack has had no time to talk, but he's been looking pretty the whole time. So now it's his chance to shine, and his hair is rather stellar, I must say. I'm kind of jealous of his dude.
Question? I think we've gone through. You guys have talked so long, I almost forgot the question.
The question, I'm setting it up, brother. The question was, Jack, how were you evaluated as a marketing leader? But you get a twofer. How were you evaluated as a marketing leader? Because obviously you're on the leadership team. You're the CEO of the U.S. division. But similarly, how are you evaluated by your clients? So you get a twofer question. So I'll let you answer the question.
I'm going to take it from the client standpoint because, just to be fair, we can only handle so much business at a time as an agency. We're not one that's just looking to go like crazy high growth. Like we only work with a certain amount of clients, and we're usually maxed out. So we're usually, in our standpoint, I know it sounds crazy, but like we're not doing a lot of marketing. We're usually like we just get fed through a network. So the stressful thing for me though is like I have to work with James or guys like James and say to them, hey,
I'm stressful. Did you hear that?
I heard that.
Give me your budget or give me part of your budget. And like my team will be, we call it your marketing team as a service. So my team will be more efficient than you going out and hiring a salaried person to do this job. Right. So efficiency looks a little bit different to me because James might say to me, hey, we have a small social media budget. I don't want to go out and hire a social media manager. I want to just test this for 4 to 6 months. I'm going to let you guys do your thing. So our whole thing is, if they come to us for social media, we're always having the problem that you're talking about, right, Daryl? Like I'm trying to prove a lot of times to a CMO that this investment is worth it, right? And I don't necessarily know if you can convince most CMOs that have an old school mindset and have marketed a certain way that social media is that impactful for them. Like I'm going to come at this a little bit differently. I don't think you're going to convince old school CMOs who are used to doing traditional marketing that they should invest heavily in social media. I don't think that you could give them enough data to change their mindset in a lot of cases. And I'm just saying that because I've experienced it, right? Now, what I do think is happening is there's a shift happening. You're getting a lot younger CMOs coming in. You're getting a lot younger directors of marketing coming in, and they get it. They've lived in it. They've grown up in it. Like they just bought something because they watched an Instagram story the night before, right? Like they are consumers of social media, and they are the people that are buying. And so I think we're at that age. Like I'm 40, right? I consider myself a guy that grew up with social media from the beginning, and I've been fully immersed in it. I just get it. And I don't want to play the H card because I do know some, 60-year-old CMOs that like really get social media and they've always got it and they love it. But I will say it's more gals that have come from traditional companies, like an enterprise company, like a Lenovo, right? They're the ones that you're not going to convince them. You're wasting your time. You're wasting the money. As an agency, I don't even try, right? I just say to them, like, we're probably not a right fit for you because you have to have a mindset. Now, if you are a CMO that gets it, social media is a no-brainer. Like you're not going to have a problem. Like James is not going to have a problem being able to track all those numbers he just talked about back to how social media influenced that. Because he's going to have like the proper things in place, right? He's going to be using UTM codes. He's going to be using HubSpot correctly. He's going to be tracking in Google Analytics. He's going to be doing all the things that he needs to do in order to be able to show that if I spend X amount of resources here, it's going to bring down my CAC, right? It's going to bring down my this. It's going to increase this. So, the right CMOs know that social media works and they can correlate numbers. They can correlate data, right? You said website traffic. Well, website traffic does matter, right? Like you could correlate that your website traffic went up as you did more social media, whether that was organic or paid.
Yes,
and then
you can
correlate that to signups, and then you can correlate that. And then what you do, and a lot of our clients have done this, is they'll shut off social media for a month, right? If the CEO says social media doesn't work, okay, well then let's shut it off for a month, and you tell me if it works or not, right? And then you watch the numbers fluctuate. So with the attribution model that we have today, like it is completely it doesn't work, right? Like you can't go out and do influencer marketing and track the guy that clicked the link, went to the thing, looked at the thing, and then 3 months later came back to the thing because social media was the first touch that he got there. Like we're at a point where there's a lot of attribution that will not happen, but you can correlate a lot of things. And the right CMOs know that. And I'm sure if you're a CMO watching, if you're that CMO or if you're not that CMO, right? Like you'll probably be able to say, yeah, Jack's right. You're never going to convince me that I'm going to go spend, 20% of my budget on social media. But then you got other CMOs who are like, yeah, Jack's right. I'm going to go spend 40% of my budget this year on social media. And when I say that is like, it's not just about social media, right? Most of the companies that when we go in and work with them, they don't have a social media problem. They have a content problem. Their social media sucks because their content sucks, right? So there's like a lot of different things that have to happen with the CMO's mindset is, they not only have to invest, it's not about investing in social media, it's actually investing into a really good content strategy that pairs with how social media works, right? And so I think there's a bigger conversation there. And a lot of times that's where a CMO doesn't get it, is they go, well, I want to invest in social media. Like I'm going to try this, like I'm going to put some money aside and everybody tells me we need to do this. We need to get better at this. I'm like, okay, great. So what's your investment for the content part of social media, right? Well, I didn't really think about that. Like I want to pay you, X amount of dollars per month to get me a lot of followers, a lot of engagement, and a lot of signups that I can, send over to my SDR team so they can book it. Like, it just doesn't work like that. So I think, industry matters when you're talking about that, right? CMOs that get it, there's like James mentioned, insurance doesn't get social media in a lot of cases because there's a lot of liability, right? There's a lot of legality stuff that they can and can't say. So that is an industry that's, traditionally kind of backwards when it comes to social media because they have legality stuff. But the companies that get it, they get it. The companies that don't, they don't. And that all falls on where's the CMO's head at.
All right. So folks, let me kind of recap what just happened here and we're going to move on. What just happened here was I asked these fine-tooth subject matter experts, how were they measured? They both told you whether it was themselves directly in an organization or themselves with their clients, that they're measured ultimately by the ROI. And then, of course, what was wonderful was James talked a little bit about some of the metrics they use to track all that and the dashboards and all the wonderful stuff and how they look at it together being the emphasis. And Jack talked about, when we looked at ROI, he starts connecting the dots of what's driving those ROIs. So it's content that leads to website visits, which leads to conversions, which leads to sales, whatever it might be. And he starts working backwards for how I got here. So if we open this up, and remember, the whole topic here was around saying goodbye to those social media vanity metrics once and for all. Nowhere in this conversation, live, unscripted, not influenced, did Jack or James use the reference likes, follows, shares.
Hold on, stop. I have to stop you. That does matter, though. And I think good CMOs understand.
Yes and no, but Carrie, give me your shot. It's going to get fun now, folks.
That stuff.
But you did my point stands. Okay, don't confuse it matters with how you were measured.
I didn't work backwards that far though. But all that stuff matters. And if a good CMO knows anything about marketing, they understand that brand drives everything, right? And right. And so how do you know when you have a good brand? I mean, it all starts with vanity metrics. There's no other way around it.
Vanity metrics are at most an indicator, though. It's all they are. They're an indicator, right? I can have the world's best vanity metrics. I can have 200 comments, but 190 of those comments are sycophants saying "attaboy."
Okay, but let me ask you a question then. If I'm a CMO and I'm trying to build my case that social media works, and my CEO goes to our LinkedIn page and says, "Oh my God, we have zero." The average likes on the post is 2. The average comments is a half, and you're dead in the water right there. So if you don't think vanity metrics work, you don't understand marketing, because your CEO, the first thing they do when they tell you that your social media sucks is they go look at the vanity metrics. They won't even get you to the point where you can have the bigger conversation.
I love this, folks.
I'm gonna bridge the gap that you guys
bridge. I know my response, but go ahead, bridge the gap.
There's probably a lot of people on here that are not executive marketers. So let's also make this tangible for all of you. Okay. I think both of you are right. But here's where the problem lies. A lot of marketing teams do not spend the time that is necessary to go and do the work in social media. And I'm not talking about posting. I'm not talking about building content. I'm talking about the tangibles of getting on Twitter and going and following the brands. You actually have to go to their brand and click it. I'm talking about those tangible things. That actually bridges the gap between what you're saying, Daryl, and what you're saying, Jack, because vanity metrics do not matter. They will also show very small numbers if you don't do that actionable part. Okay. Now, here's where I'm going to bridge your gap, Daryl. If you actually go and do this, and your social media team is active on every platform, following the right accounts in your ICP, guess what that means? When you do post, the likelihood of it reaching the right people with the amount of likes going up and the comments going up will have a great impact on the business from a revenue and pipeline perspective. But if you do not do that, those vanity metrics do not matter because you're not putting in the work that's necessary to make it actionable.
And now I'm going to go one step further. No, you've had your chance. My turn now. Oh. I will argue, this is I told you it's live, folks. I will argue that you're 100% right, but the vanity metrics are the same as website visits. You yourself said website visits matter, but if they don't convert, what's the point?
Yeah.
Vanity metrics matter because you have engagement, but if they don't convert, so what? Right? So the social media, the vanity metrics on their own are interesting. They're an indicator, but if they don't convert, they're irrelevant.
But you can't have one without the other.
You totally can, because over 90% of people are lurkers.
So if you want to have a successful LinkedIn page, and you get no engagement on that LinkedIn page for 2 months, and you want to say to your CMO, or you want to say to your CEO, dude, we need to invest in LinkedIn. And he goes to your LinkedIn page after 2 months of you posting content on there, and he sees 2 likes, 0 comments.
Yep.
Over and over and over and over. 2 things are going to happen. Number 1, you're dead in the water. He's not going to believe your numbers, any numbers you say that signups or any of that. He's going to be like, well, we look like crap. Like, that looks like crap.
Yep.
Number 2, so your vanity metrics right there, you didn't focus on those, you're dead. Number 2 is you'll never get any momentum to get follower counts like James is talking about. Yeah, there's ways I agree with, like on Twitter, you can go follow, but like at some point, if the vanity metrics don't go up, they're not going to correlate with all the other numbers. And I can tell you this from experience, working like with 50 to 100 building SaaS company LinkedIn pages. If the vanity metrics don't go up, the number of qualified leads don't go up. The number of website visits don't go up. The vanity metrics have to go up and they have to matter and they have to be.
So here's the difference. I'm going to go to my CEO, and I'm going to say, why the hell are you looking at my company page? Who the F goes to a company page anymore? Literally nobody goes to a company page. What drives social media is the individual, not the company brand. And if we don't have an individual or 2 or 3 who are representatives, brand ambassadors, evangelists, call it what you will, then we're never going to have a traction. But at the end of the day, what matters are not vanity metrics, because you can't correlate that vanity metric to revenue. What matters is that we've got that great content that Jack talked about that we're sharing and we're starting in conversations, but we have trackable links that I can actually attribute to the whole process and say that deal came because it started with them downloading that piece of content that they saw on LinkedIn because that company's evangelist, that individual has got 20,000 followers. That's the vanity metrics versus websites versus, attribution, UTMs that are trackable and measurable.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong, like partly, but we're in the land of brand. I mean, it is like no time more than ever has it mattered that people know who you are.
I agree with you.
Like, there's no time more than it is now.
I totally agree with you.
You guys are in like a crazy competitive space, right?
Yes.
But there's 1,000 tools that do what you guys do, and people only know 3 of them, right? Hootsuite, Agorapulse, and
I said it at the beginning. Yep.
That's it.
Commodity.
Right? I mean, everybody else will growth hack, but they'll all kind of die. They'll have a little bit of market share.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, you guys have all done social very, very well. You've used your tool the way that it was supposed to be used, and that's why your brand is where it is for the most part.
And I would argue, it's not that we've done social well, I would argue back to what you said, and you were spot on. We have a great content machine that allowed us to use social. That's what
that's what I was going to say. Is like, bottom line is it boils down to, if you're going to invest in a social strategy, don't half-ass it. Like, there's too many leaders out there that just hire a social media manager and be like, go to town, right? Like,
oh my gosh.
And then they don't have like the strategy and the planning behind it, tying it back into there, and like why they need to do these intangibles of UTM links, and why they need to do the intangibles of going out and following brands, and why they need to do the intangibles of making sure that the content strategy that is built actually serves the people that you're trying to get to buy your product.
Yep. And serve the channel, right? I think that's where we're also in. We're in a point where it's even getting harder as marketers, because social media people have to try to, a lot of companies try to fit content that doesn't fit into social media, right?
Oh my God, yeah. Oh my God,
and,
yeah.
And that's a big piece of this too, right? And that's where a CMO comes into play that really has to understand to say, like, we're going to budget social media content. This is a line item, right? We're going to have website content. Here's a line item. We're going to have brand content for sales enablement. There's a line item, right? Like, the line item that's left out is actually creating content for social media, right? It's
1,000%.
like, well, why didn't just use our content that we have? We just spent, X amount of dollars on content. Go fit that onto social media. And it's like, well, it just doesn't. This isn't what drives people to be social on social media, and that's a biggest thing.
And
that
I don't want
every client.
I also don't want people to get it wrong, though. Like, content is not just like consistently promoting your company. And
all right, I'm going to stop you there because there's a lot more I want to get through, and we're going to keep on this exact same theme. So this next topic I want to talk about, the question I was going to ask you is, what channels are driving your strategy? If you take a look at this slide, this is a slide, folks, from the HubSpot 2022 Marketing Industry Trends Report. They interviewed over 1,000 global marketers, and they said, here's 17 channels. Which channels are the most important to drive your strategy. And what's interesting here, we think of things like whenever, I don't know what you guys, when I think of channels, I instantly go to pay-per-click, events, email, content. What was interesting on this one, and we have B2B and B2C from their data. You can look this up yourself, folks, if you want to. Quick little Google search will find it for you. But they're both number one. Both number one were social media. But this is the part I find so interesting. Like, look at the B2B one. Content marketing was fourth. So, Jack and James, just for context, social media is at 45.1%. Content marketing is at 33.4%. They're number four. So they do go together. But what I find that's so interesting is you need the content machine, but you need the distribution of that content. And exactly what you said, James, it's not just about posting, it's about being connected to your target audience or doing influencer marketing. Like if you even look at over here on the B2C, you see influencer marketing is number 4 at 32.4%, trying to reach audiences that you wouldn't be able to reach otherwise. So you're spot on. The content is king, but the distribution is the essential element. And I'm not shocked that social media is number one on both. Is that a shock to either of you guys or not?
Why don't we ask the audience, how many of you have actually created a piece of content and it never seen the light of day? I bet you there's hundreds of marketers.
Everybody's saying, they're all saying, yeah, totally, hundreds, yeah.
Or it was distributed in a single channel, right? And it only went to one place.
Or it was a post saying,
to multiples.
This week's blog post on why my dog ate my homework with no conversation, no engagement, no nothing, no tagging, no optimization, no reach on the company page.
And the copy, then let's pare that down to copywriting, right? Copywriting is different on social media. Most companies,
I love you brought that up,
struggle with social media copy. They send us something and I'm like, I'll read it. I'm like, you really think we're going to post this on LinkedIn? It's going to drive engagement. It's like, you got to think through how you're speaking to people, right? And the medium, the way that LinkedIn, and unfortunately, this is the way it works. I hate that it is, but every medium has a certain way that you have to write your copy, So it's getting so complicated as we add these more channels. Social media marketing job is a very hard job. Give everybody on here.
My God, it's hard. Yes. And we started off, not only is it hard, they don't get the respect they deserve. Yeah, I would argue, and this is my biggest personal beef, and I would love you guys either to validate me or tell me I'm a moron. My biggest, and James, I know you're going to default to moron, so don't do that, brother. My biggest personal beef, I was at the B2B MX, the B2B Marketing Exchange and Forum in Scottsdale recently, and I had a room about 100 people when I was doing a session, and I opened it up just by asking questions. And I said, okay, how many people here work for an agency? It's like 10%. The rest were all non-agencies. Great. I said, how many people here have social media as one of your marketing mandates? Of course, everybody says yes. I'm setting the stage a little bit. How many people here have a designated person that's the social media person? And almost all of them said yes. I said, okay, how many people here who have a designated person to social media have that person only doing social media, nothing else, no events, no marketing coordinating, no generalist stuff, no list cleaning. They only do social media. Boom, down to less than 5%. So if we look at this and we say social media is the channel, if I listen to the content is the machine, if I listen to what Jack said, that it's, the messaging is the science, if I listen to what James say is that the dashboard is the proof that what we're doing is making a difference, why do we not staff social media accordingly? That's
because
my
it's
golden
expensive,
question.
right? Okay, so I want to give an example because I used to sell marketing automation for Acton when marketing automation was brand new, right?
They were at the show, by the way.
Yeah, and so let's just call marketing automation what it is today. It's evolved and every platform kind of does it. But I think what most people didn't know in the early days of marketing automation was that you couldn't buy marketing automation email platform on its own and then just expect a marketing director to run it, right? It was the marketing director has now got to go out and hire a somebody that can code, a designer to create the landing pages, a coder to make those look good inside of a marketing automation platform. You got to have a copywriter that writes the copy. There was just, it was like, you weren't successful with marketing automation. Of course, when we sold it, we didn't really want them to know that, but we were like, hey, by the way, you probably should add budget in for 3 more employees, right? Like if you buy Marketo, you need 4 employees to run Marketo. Social media is that now, right? It's like, you just can't unless there's a diamond in the rough, 1 out of a million. So I'm sure there's 1 or 2 people on here that can do this, but it's very rare where you can just go out and hire a social media person. And then they create the content, they write the copy, they do the videos, they run the webinar, the live streams. There's usually multiple people and there's a bigger budget that has to happen to make social media successful, right? Social media manager needs to have a content person, a video editor, access to a video editor, multiple things. Maybe they're the visionary and they can do a few of those things. But I think that's where a lot of companies, they're not truly investing in social media just by hiring a social media person in a lot of cases. They need other help. That social media person needs a team and they need help. Now, as a startup, a lot of startups can't do that. You'd have to growth hack that. I get it. But once you start to get some budget, a true good social media company that I work with, they have 2-3 people executing a good social media strategy, and they're on multiple channels. They're on 3 channels, right? Doing it.
And they're all using the grower pulse. Sorry, I couldn't resist, folks. James, you wanted to jump in, I saw.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, first of all, to answer your very first question, which was like, which channels are we actually using to promote? Obviously social media, but if you break that down even further, the ones that work really well for us right now, keep in mind, we try to primarily reach like e-commerce brands or D2C brands, which, by the way, like, they use different channels. Just want to throw that out there. Like Instagram, for example, works really, really well for D2C brands. Yep. Not so much for us. What works well for us is Twitter, LinkedIn, and TikTok. Those are the 3 big ones for us. And the reason why TikTok works so well for us is because there are tons of customer service agents out there complaining about like what people do when they call in. And we actually help solve for some of that. So it's like, it's a perfect avenue. So I do think that to find the right channels and to produce good content that's going to resonate, I do think you have to do a little bit of research. Like, and what I mean by that is like, actually go in there and search hashtags for things that might be prominent to your audience. See what kind of content is already out there and then be different. And that ties to the content, right?
Yeah. Stand out.
Yeah. And I think that the other part that we do a lot of is, again, like we do a lot of email. So you mix that with social media as well, and it works quite well. And those are 2 really efficient channels to drive growth without having to bring on a ton of cost.
I think, so. I think a good point too. Hold on 1 second. So I think the other thing that good social media companies do is they think of social media when they build their campaigns, right? So like you said, an old school CMO is like, here's a campaign. Oh, the campaign's over. And he goes to the social media team. Hey, by the way, here's the campaign.
Let's get this promoted.
Yes. Over the wall.
That understand social media. They bring their social media manager in from the start and they say, here's our campaign. We need to make these 10 pieces of content for this campaign. By the way, these 3 pieces go on social. These go into email. These go into paid media, right? So like from the beginning, like, that's where you're working for a company that's social media first or driven, is like they bring you in from the beginning and they help you build the vision of the campaign from the social perspective. And I will say that's just one of the ways that I know we're working with the right company, right? They're bringing us into stuff way early, even in the conceptual stage of it, going, here's our new product. By the way, come on in, hear about the product, and tell us how we're going to create the content and what's the social media campaign vision for this.
It's better to actually have that. Sorry, Daryl.
Go ahead.
It's better to have your social media team early on in your strategy and planning for one of the most simple and obvious reasons. And that's that if you really want to try to stand out and be different than what everyone else is doing that's trying to sell a similar product than yours, they actually need to be part of the strategy and planning. Otherwise, they can't use their creative juices to be able to make it happen. If they're brought in late, then all they have is like a timeline and a short timeline to come up with an idea which is going to limit the creativity and it's going to limit the ability for them to stand out and the content to really resonate with people.
All right, I'm going to ask some rapid fire questions here. James, do you measure how well your content converts?
Yes.
Jack, you or your clients, you can speak on behalf of them. Do you measure how well content converts? Okay, Jack, do you measure how well your pay-per-click campaigns, if assuming you do them, work?
We don't do a lot of pay-per-click, but the stuff that we do, I mean, it drives to a landing page, tracks, form to a CRM, and
Right.
Yeah.
James, do you measure if you do pay-per-click, whether now your past jobs, do you track how it converts?
Yeah, of course.
All right. Events, and they're harder, I recognize. But do you do your best? And it's always, the events are the biggest pain in the ass because they're more awareness than they are demand generation, in my opinion. But that aside, do you track events and how well they perform?
To the best of my ability.
Yes, it's a fair, honest answer. I'm with you there, brother. Email. Do you guys track how well that converts?
100%.
Yeah.
All right. Everything I've just said to everybody here, those are all channels. That means they can go back to that big ass dashboard that James talked about earlier on that Jack said, you probably have this. And he said, yes, we do. And he said, I sat down with my staff. We look at all the numbers. He presents that to the board because this is how they're held accountable is for revenue and they have to work backwards. They track all these channels. Gentlemen, here's the setup. If social media is the number one channel, can you today in your dashboards, and if you want to plead the fifth or say no comment, you're welcome to, can you tell me literally how much money your social media effort drives in actual revenue? Can you show me that?
Yes.
Depending on the client, all clients are different. If they have the right, we didn't talk about this, right? Do they have the right marketing tech stack? Hello?
That's a big one.
We're going to indirectly get to that shortly. I'm setting you up. That's why I'm asking this question.
If they have that, yes.
Okay.
I think there's levels, Daryl, right? There's levels of which you can track.
We did a study. I can show you the slides.
Let me give you an example, though, because this is where it gets really complicated, right? Let's say that we have a webinar, and it's just driven by social media, and our CEO of the company shares that on LinkedIn. He drives 100 new people to that webinar, and we have a long sales cycle. Like this is like where it gets complicated, right? Like this is
agreed.
And the CEO shares it. Lead comes in through a webinar, watches it, who knows, right? That's where the tracking gets a little bit wonky. How long were they on? I know we get that all the time, but let's just say that 90 to 120 day sales cycle. He fills out a demo form a month later after the event that he signed up from the LinkedIn of the CEO, and converts into an opportunity. 6 months later, he closes. Who gets credit for that? Right? That's the hardest part of a CMO's job, because a CMO has to decide who they want to give credit to.
I think that's.
I have a slide on that. I'm going to ask you to table that for just a couple of minutes because you're spot on. For context, we asked the same question. We went and looked at 10 million plus social media posts that went through the Agorapulse platform. And I don't have the slides in front of me, so I'm going to be roughly correct, folks, but not down to the single digit. Of the 10 million plus posts, not including Instagram, because on an Instagram post, for those who aren't familiar with it, who aren't IG rock stars, you cannot include a link. You can in the comments, not in the post. Of the 10 million plus, not including Instagram, roughly 1/3 of those had links. Of the 1/3 of those posts that had links, 1.9% were trackable. 98.1% were not trackable. So I love Jack's answer. He kind of said, well, it depends on the client, depends on what they're doing, and it depends on their tech stack and everything else, right? So, and Jack's point was also similarly there, saying who gets the attribution. Well,
hold on. If you're listening right now and you're a social media manager and you're not using UTM links and you're expecting to get a raise, don't expect to get a raise. You will never justify your raise. I hate to tell you this. So if you're not using UTM links, and Daryl said 98.3% of you are.
98.1% we're not.
Are not. So 98.1% of you are not on track to get a raise in most cases. So use UTM links, and I might have just got you a raise.
And that brings me to the topic I wanted to I was trying to build up to, which is, okay, if I accept everything you guys are saying, it is a channel, it is strategic, it is essential, and it ties back ultimately as a vehicle. I loved your example, Jack, where the CEO shares a link, they sign up, 6 months later, they become a client. I love that example. Very real example. And in the end, these guys have just said, I'm measured on numbers, CAC, revenue, LTV, NRR, etc. Jack just said, if you're not doing this, you're dead. But if you are doing it, you just got a raise. We opened it up by saying a lot of them aren't respected, but we said to be respected, you have to understand how the people are measured, because that's what matters. And if you don't have that knowledge, like James starting off a data analyst, you have to learn that knowledge. If you learn that knowledge, you'll be respected. It all comes down to here, which is the question was, how do I build that? Remember, we started off by talking about vanity metrics versus real data. Vanity is interesting, but real data is what is going to get you that raise. It's going to get exactly as Jack just said. So the question is, do I use UTMs? Absolutely yes.
Hold on.
The next question I had on this slide was attribution, which goes back to your point, Jack. How do you attribute?
If you're a social media person and you want to understand, like you said, if you only know vanity metrics because you're kind of a basic social media person, that's all you've done, kind of, right? You've just kind of like posted stuff. I think the biggest fallout with social media jobs is they don't necessarily, some of them don't understand marketing, right? Yes. And I think if you want to get taken serious as a social media person, you need to take on a lot of more responsibility that doesn't just include social media, right? Like if I worked for James right now, knowing he's a data guy and I was the social media manager, I would be like salivating because I'd be like, James, teach me landing pages, teach me copy, teach me creative, teach me HubSpot. Like I want to learn HubSpot because I'll tell you right now, if you learned HubSpot, and you were a social media manager, you would understand that you're killing yourself because you don't use UTM links, right? So I think there's a bigger picture for a lot of social media people where they need to understand marketing. And the best social media managers, they started in a marketing role and then they moved over to a social media role, right? Because they understood the whole life cycle of how this thing works and how James comes to that conclusion of his numbers when he goes to the board.
Well, I think as we talk about like attribution and some of this, I can tell you I used to consult like big companies on their data architecture and stuff on the side and helped some very, very large ones figure out their stuff. And I will tell you, no matter what size of company you're at, big, small, every single one of them has the problem of architecting the data in a way that it can be attributed. Okay. So all marketers want to talk about, the holy grail of attribution. And you hear like everybody on LinkedIn that's talking about, all you have to do is put in a form field that says, how did you hear about us? Well, that's bullshit. Let me be real with you. Okay. Here's why it's bullshit. How did you hear about us is a question that you're asking the person the moment that you're talking to them, what they remember. That's it.
I've had this conversation.
It's what they remember. And
or the first choice. Because
it's the first choice, 100%. And there have been data models that I have built in reporting, and quite honestly, like I don't know if I didn't have the experience that I've had consulting with data and architecting it in a way, I'm not even sure that I would have the skill set or know how to hire for the skill set. So coming back to the problem of marketing leaders not being able to do this, to know what to do. Right? I have lived that world. So I know how to get into HubSpot and I know how to architect certain fields so that I can make sure that they're attributable. And I know how to tie that back into reporting. I know how to do it cross-functionally across the contact object, across the company object, across the deal object. And guess what that means? You have to create fields for each one of those objects. And then they have to have workflows that tie to them. Like the ops side of the house needs to get way more involved in social media tracking. And right now, the ops side of the house is not. And I think that's one of the biggest fundamental gaps in being able to track ROI with social media efforts. And that's why you have people on LinkedIn having a POV of like, all you have to do is how you hear about us. And that's how you do it. And attribution doesn't exist. And what about dark social? Well, guess what? You can track it all. I have news for you. It may not be perfect, but you can track it all. And there are living examples of this stuff and proof of it.
All right. We are
takeaway there.
Okay, go ahead. Go quick. Be quick.
If you're a social media manager, listen to what James just said. And if you're fighting for your life to prove that your job, what you do works, go become best friends with the ops person and say to help me win, teach me how to win, because they will, if they're good and they like you, they will make you more awesome.
I used to always say become best friends with the CFO, but it's the same reason, to understand the ops, understand the numbers. So here's what we know, folks. My last point I want to talk about was how is this going to affect your career? And what you've just heard these fine gentlemen say over and over again, you do that and you've got an unlimited career. Look at James, started off as a data analyst. He's a multi-CMO. Look at Jack, award-winning marketer, but he started and he had to learn everything himself. It's not the vanity metrics. That's not what these guys are talking about. They're interesting. That's it. It's the hardcore numbers. We can help you with that. Folks, we're out of time. Hope you enjoyed today's conversation. If you want to learn more about Agorapods and how we can help you track the ROI, all of them, including UTMs and with the attribution, check out agorapods.com, get a free trial, get a free demo. That's there. If you want to learn more about Flip, I believe the website is flipcx.com. Did I get that right, James?
You did. Follow us on LinkedIn. You'll see.
There you go.
I'm practicing.
Oh, yeah, I love you. Learn from them.
That's a CMO trying to bring up his vanity metrics.
No, actually, it's not. You'll enjoy our content just as much as somebody who will buy it. Promise.
There we go. I love it.
Okay,
and that's
like that.
James Gilbert on LinkedIn. And of course, Jack Kozakowski, he's a legend. Follow him on LinkedIn. He is with Creation Agency. You can check him out at creationagency.com. Gentlemen, so much. Loved the live and unscripted conversation. If you folks like this, there's more of this at Agorapods. In the meantime, I'm Daryl. I'll talk to you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.